protests across the whole world. Alright, Shalom, Israel. First and foremost, as always, I would like to give all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Raksaha, Huadash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing His truth and sincerity, while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return, and double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Hashem, Yahweh Shai. And I just want to do a response to this video, showing you that the whole entire world is in an uproar. Chaos, protests, rallies, riots, you name it, is all over the world. And why is this so? The answer is in the book of Job, chapter 9, verse 24. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked.
This skull flag.
Fair use. This is fair use. Again, this is fair use. I am not using this video for monetary gain. This video is being used for educational purposes only.
This skull flag has been raised here, here, and here. What is it, and why is it popping up at protests across the world? In Kathmandu last week, Nepali Gen Z led tens of thousands of protesters into the streets, furious over government corruption. In Indonesia, protests swelled after a 21-year-old was killed by police. Elsewhere, crowds took to the streets in the Philippines and France. So, what does the flag mean? Well, it comes from Japan's best-selling manga, One Piece. In the story, the flag is the Jolly Roger of the Straw Hat Pirates, who don't just hunt treasure, but also fight oppressive powers and demand freedom. For protesters, that message hits home.
Justru ini kan teguran ya untuk pemerintah, agar pemerintah pada akhirnya benar-benar melihat gitu.
The protests around the world may have different origins, but the frustrations are the same. That's why young people have turned this skull flag into a global banner of defiance and freedom.
So, you know,
Last time
it's interesting. I thought this video was interesting, how basically they're using a flag from the anime One Piece. A lot of you brothers, if you watch anime, you should be familiar with One Piece. The anime's been around really since the 1900s, but really popular anime. I watch it too sometimes, on some rare occasion. But you know, that flag there represents fighting against oppressive governments and, you know, battle for freedom, which these people, you know, whether if they are heathens or Israelites that look like heathens living amongst these heathens, they are taking the incorrect stance against these government oppressions, because no person on this planet is going to stop the oppression of the governments or the hell that has been brought upon the entire earth. Okay, there's only one being that is going to put an end to all the sufferings that the people is going through on the entire planet. And that being is Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai is the true name of the Messiah that you hear about in the Holy Scriptures. Okay, he's coming back in what the world calls UFOs. And when he returns, he is going to take down all of the governments. And a matter of fact, I got a precept real quick. Don't know if this is going to be a short lesson or a long one, but Bible. And upon his head, is it seven crowns? KJV. I should just put many because I don't know. Okay. Okay. Because let me see. Okay, Bible. He that sat on the white horse had many crowns. Because there's a point I want to make here. Okay, let's see, Revelation 19. And let's see if this is it. Revelation 19 verse 11. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. Now, this is not talking about an actual white horse. This is talking about a chariot, because in the Holy Scriptures, what the world ignorantly calls UFOs are referred to as several different things in the Holy Scriptures. A pillar of fire by night. Okay, it is also the UFOs are also referred to as clouds in the Holy Scriptures. When you go to the book of Psalms 104 verse 2 to 3, it tells you who make up the clouds as chariots. Now when you go into that word clouds, it goes back to the Hebrew word marakab. Okay, which means a vehicle. In other words, a vehicle. And the so-called UFOs are the vehicles in which the angels of the Lord travel around in. They travel around in what the world calls UFOs. Okay? So the UFOs are also known as clouds. Okay? A flying roll. The UFOs are also referred to as flying rolls in the Holy Scriptures. Okay? A flying roll, a whirlwind. Okay, UFOs are also known as whirlwinds in the Holy Scriptures. They go by many names. So a white horse is another name for a chariot of Israel. Okay, and they are known as the chariots of Israel in the Holy Scriptures. And our Messiah, when he comes back, he's coming back in what the world calls a UFO. The proof of that is in 2nd Esdras, the 13th chapter, as well as Revelation chapter 1 verse 7, and the book of Acts, the 1st chapter, when the angel of the Lord explained to Yahushai's disciples that the same way Yahushai left the earth is the same way he's returning. So there was a white horse, and this white horse represents or is a metaphor for the so-called UFO that the Messiah is coming back in. And he is Yahushai, the true name of the Messiah of the Holy Scriptures, and he that sat upon him was called faithful and true. And in righteousness he doth judge and make war. Okay? And indeed, when he comes back, he's coming back to wage war against the heathens, starting with the so-called white man. His eyes were as a flame of fire, right? Because scriptures tell you he was a wine bibber. But literally, if your eyes are as a flame of fire, it can also symbolize as having glowing red eyes. Okay, like you have glowing red eyes. That can also be symbolic as having eyes as a flame of fire, having bright glowing red eyes. Okay. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and that's the point. And these many crowns being upon the Messiah's head represents how he's going to make war against the other nations and conquer them. He's going to conquer these other nations. He's going to take them out of their rulership, and he's going to be the new ruler. So these many crowns are basically the crowns of the rulers of the other nations, of whom he's going to conquer. Now, does that mean that, the Messiah has a big ass head and there's going to be like 30 different crowns on his head? No, that's not what it means. It just the many crowns on his head is a metaphor for how he's going to conquer the other nations, and he's going to take them out of power. He's going to subdue the nations and put them into captivity. And it's going to start with the so-called elites of this society who call themselves Rothschilds or Rockefellers. Okay, according to the book of Psalms 149, there, the 149th chapter, okay, so-called elites and the other nations are going to go into captivity. Okay, chains and shackles are going to be slapped on them according to biblical prophecy, and they're going right into slavery. Okay, and he, the Messiah, had a name written that no man knew but himself, and that name goes into the rank. Okay, he had a rank that no man knew but himself. Okay, so that name goes into his rank. So let's go ahead and close this out, and let's come over here to Proverbs 29 verse 2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, is not the wicked in rulership, fulfilling the prophecy of Job 9 verse 24, as well as Genesis, the 27th chapter. Okay, in Genesis, the 27th chapter, Isaac, okay, in Genesis, the 27th chapter, Isaac blessed Esau with the fatness of the earth. Esau had control of the fatness of the earth, meaning the control over the whole inhabited earth, starting with the Renaissance period all the way up until now. Okay, ever since then, these so-called white people who call themselves Rothschilds or Rockefellers, in which they're really the biblical Edomites. An Edomite is a descendant of Esau, who was blessed with the fatness of the earth in the book of Genesis, the 27th chapter. These Edomites have had control over the whole entire face of the earth ever since the Renaissance period. And even as I speak, they still have control over the whole face of the whole earth. They still have control over the whole face of the earth, okay? And they really have control over the whole inhabited earth through their monetary banking system. So when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. And these protests, rallies, riots that you're seeing all over the earth, they are a product of people mourning because of the misdeeds and all of the wicked things that the wicked, the Edomites, starting with the so-called elites, have done since they've been in power. Because in the book of First Maccabees, the first chapter, it tells you that when Alexander the Greek died, his four generals, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, Cassander, and Seleucid, they all put crowns upon themselves, meaning they basically made themselves rulers, lords. And after making themselves kings, rulers, right, it tells you that evils were multiplied in the earth. So once again, the wicked is in rulership, and what's happening? Evils have been multiplied in the earth. And because of these evils, what do we have here? We have protests, we have rallies, and we have riots. 2nd Esdras 15 verse 4. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And these are talking about race wars. The one people will be the Israelites, the Negro, Latino, and Native Indians, versus the another people. The another people would be the Edomites, which will be you so-called white people. So there's going to be race wars in America with swords in their hands. The modern day sword on the low level are the guns. The guns are your modern day swords. And that's what these race wars are going to be fought with. These race wars are going to be fought with guns. Okay. Now, on the other hand, because 2nd Esdras 15 verse 15 also goes two ways, this can also be talking about civil war. And there is going to be civil war in America. Civil war has already happened in various different countries across the world, but it's coming to the United States of America because ultimately the so-called elites have an agenda, novus ordo seclorum. Okay, new order of the ages. Okay, a new world order. And through that new world order, they want chaos to be in the streets. They want people to be out there. They want people to crash out. They want people to bug out. They want people to be out there begging and asking for questions, looking for solutions, so that when the so-called elites come with their solution, they're going to come with more draconian measures. They're going to come with more legislations and more bills that take away your rights, the freedom that you think you have. And then ultimately, it's going to lead to you having to put a device the size of a grain of rice inside your body, where you could be monitored, tracked, and watched 24/7 by a supercomputer. And that device, the size of a grain of rice, the CHIP, is the mark of the beast. And if you take that device, you're going to be destroyed in the lake of fire, which America is the lake of fire, according to biblical prophecy. Okay, so that's basically the road that this country is heading towards. Nothing but pure chaos, mayhem, anarchy, dissident, civil war, race wars, famine, pestilence. Nothing but chaos, confusion, okay, fear, panic, destruction, robots, AI, murder bots, slaughter bots, robot dogs, okay, weapons where you get shot by them, you disappear at your clothes, sound cannons, tanks, martial law troops, okay, torture and concentration camps, human experimentations, and ultimately AI is going to be out here in the streets, basically killing people on sight, especially you Israelites, which are you so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Indians. Verse 16 of 2nd Esdras chapter 15, for the sword in their destruction, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. So when you go into this word sedition, the word sedition literally means an uprise or a rebellion against the government or a higher authority. That's what a sedition is. It means a rebellion against a government or a higher authority. And that's basically what protests, rallies, and riots are. They are seditions and protests against a higher authority or a government.
This skull flag has been raised here, here, and here. What is it, and why is it popping up at protests across the world? In Kathmandu last week, Nepali Gen Z led tens of thousands of protesters into the streets, furious over government corruption. In Indonesia, protests swelled after a 21-year-old was killed by police. Elsewhere, crowds took to the streets in the Philippines and France. So, what does the flag mean? Well, it comes from Japan's best-selling manga, One Piece. In the story, the flag is the Jolly Roger of the Straw Hat Pirates, who don't just hunt treasure, but also fight oppressive powers and demand freedom. For protesters, that message hits home.
Justru ini kan teguran ya untuk pemerintah, agar pemerintah pada akhirnya benar-benar melihat gitu.
The protests around the world may have different origins, but the frustrations are the same. That's why young people have turned this skull flag into a global banner of defiance and freedom.
With that, I'm going to say shalom. It's on to the next one.